Send check or money order, or use your credit card.
This is CNN.
A sea of human misery in Croatia, where civilians try to make their way out of a devastated city.
Thousands of Haitians are floating in legal limbo. They can't come into the U.S., but they can't be forced out either.
And a new look at a towering figure of the 20th century will interview the official biographer of Sir Winston Churchill. To our viewers in the United States and around the world, welcome to World Day. I'm Reed Collins in Washington.
And I'm Bobby Batiste at the CNN Center in Atlanta. War in Yugoslavia rages on, and with it, tales of horror and atrocity. The Reuters news agency reports that Croatian forces are accused of slaughtering 41 children in a Serbian village outside Vukovar. It quotes a photographer as saying the children's bodies were dumped in a cellar, their throats slashed. The bodies of other Serbs reportedly were strewn about the village's streets and gardens. For more on the fratricidal war in Yugoslavia, we have two reports. Paul Davis from Dubrovnik, but first, Mike Nicholson in Vukovar.
The army has begun emptying the hospital here. Not the wounded, they're leaving that to others, but the able-bodied, the old, the women, the children, taking them in convoy to an assembly camp just outside of town. All the young men are picked out and taken away to be interrogated as prisoners of war. From this camp, families minus their sons and young husbands will be transported to safe towns of their choice further inside Croatia. International Red Cross teams are, as of today, acting as their guarantors of safe passage. But the teams have still to enter the hospital to help the sick and wounded. The army appears reluctant to let them. It is after the hundreds of Croatian fighters still hiding inside.
If fighters surrender, then the other side can consider them as prisoners. I mean, we are not a power to forbid that the army is taking prisoners among the wounded. What we want is that the wounded are protected, are cared for, and that we can register them and follow them up wherever they are, in jail or in another hospital. So that's our main goal.
The evacuation of armor and artillery has also begun, including the first of the tanks that did so much to reduce this town to rubble. Michael Nicholson, ITN, Vukovar.
Sailing into a harbor still burning after last week's shelling, the Italian hospital ship San Marco, on a mission to rescue the weakest and most vulnerable citizens of this besieged port. The Serbian-dominated federal forces had agreed to allow the evacuation of more than 1,000 women, children, the sick and the wounded. The operation was organized by officials from the United Nations children's charity UNICEF, part of a longer-term strategy to remove the helpless and the sick from the firing line while it is still possible. These people will be taken to Italy until it is safe for them to return to their homes and families. It was an emotional departure for those leaving and those left behind to face an uncertain future. The Federal Navy had lifted its blockade to allow in the hospital ship and a second vessel, a ferry which also carried humanitarian supplies for Dubrovnik. Food, medicine, and ominously, 200 coffins needed for those who died in most recent fighting and those expected to lose their lives when the ceasefire ends. The ferry stayed in Dubrovnik just long enough to be unloaded. When it sailed out again, Britain's consul, Sarah Maroica, and her husband were on board. They had remained in Dubrovnik during 6.5 weeks of shelling, during which they lost their home. The consul said she decided to go only after satisfying herself that all British citizens who wanted to leave had been safely evacuated. The city she leaves behind is so short of food, its residents are now reduced to scavenging among the gutted dockside warehouses for vegetables and other supplies that may still be edible. The arrival of foreign medical aid and the local extension of the ceasefire has given the people of Dubrovnik reason to hope that their city may not become a second Vukovar. Paul Davis, ITN, Dubrovnik.
ITN reporter David Chater is recovering from a gunshot wound but may be hospitalized for several weeks. He was shot last week covering the fighting in Yugoslavia and gave his first interview to ITN colleague Nicholas Glass.
A first visit for David from friends and colleagues. He was moved from intensive care on Monday His first words, a thank you.
You got me out of here.
Well, there's a lot of help from other people. They got you out amazingly quickly. Remarkable, but it's a heck of a shock, I must say. How are you feeling?
Very, very weak.
Yeah.
The wound to his stomach and back was very serious, but he has youth, spirit, and the Cheta Constitution on his side.
Getting better. Each hour.
Each hour.
Each hour.
And the better he gets, the more
improving, yes.
And the better he gets, the more he complains, I expect.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
Like his wife Mel, anyone who knows him well were encouraged when David began complaining about the nurses, stormtroopers he called them. David was shot on Friday afternoon while covering the horrific battle for Vukovar.
As I tipped over when the bullet hit, I didn't know what it was. I thought it could have been a mortar or anything. I thought suddenly I'm not in touch with my legs. And I'm on the ground. And I was terrified that spine had been hit or something serious had happened. But then I started feeling my toes as they dragged me away. I realized my legs were coming with me, so I was very pleased. Then the pain hit. But John was with me, and they got me in very quickly. And quite frankly, I came around essentially in very good hands. So I'm feeling good. The prognosis is good.
What do you remember about the journey from Vukovar?
I remember it was it's the most exciting helicopter ride I've had, actually. I'd do anything for a helicopter ride, but I didn't do that one again. It was great. It was great. I knew I was getting there fast. I was staying conscious. Saw a bit of the countryside. Couldn't see... Now, Boise, you weren't there, were you? No.
No, sure.
But they were really taking very, very good care of me. They were really pushing me through so fast. And then, memories came back. If only I just turned round at a third of a second beforehand, or hadn't been thinking about my piece to camera. What reporter doesn't? Then I might have missed it, and he might have missed me, but he didn't.
You've had a lot of messages here.
Yeah, a lot of old friends have been in touch. That's really good news. I'd like to say thanks. I'm actually fine, and I'll be back on my feet, hopefully within 3 weeks, but not back at work. I'm looking forward to some beach.
You'll be able to halve your alcohol consumption.
I think I'm going to have to, aren't I? Yeah. See, everything's got a silver lining, hasn't it? It's healthy for me.
Well, the Bush administration says today it's conferring with other countries about trying to absorb a wave of Haitian refugees who have been fleeing their impoverished island. Hundreds of them have been plucked from the oceans this past week. Their ships barely seaworthy, the trip through the Caribbean literally death-defying. A restraining order issued by a federal judge yesterday has at least temporarily stopped U.S. Coast Guard efforts to repatriate them, that is, force them back to their island. On Capitol Hill within this past hour, a call for compassion and allegations of racism from the New York Democrat whose district includes the largest population of Haitians.
The problem is the attitude of our government. Why are we pursuing what I would call a David Duke immigration policy? There is no difference that can be pinpointed except the fact that these people are black. The way in which Haitians have traditionally been handled and are being handled in this situation can be explained only by the fact that they're black. There is no clearer political persecution than the kind of persecution that Haitians are experiencing right now. If people are being shot down in the street, if they can't sleep in their homes, they have to go sleep in the hills or somewhere else because they're afraid of the military out of control, a bunch of thugs in military uniform, then what could be more clearly political persecution?
Still unclear is the fate of some 2,500 Haitians who remain aboard Coast Guard cutters at this hour. Well,
Fire rips through one of Ireland's most famous castles, virtually destroying the 18th century structure. That story's coming up on World Day. Also ahead, homing in on the truth was former hostage Terry Waite, secretly working with Oliver North.
Grandma cleaned her dentures with toothpaste. Mom used a soak. I used the denture cleanser of the 90s. Fast-acting Denture Foam. Deep cleans like tablets, fast like toothpaste. To loosen food stains so you can quickly brush dentures clean. Get Denture Foam. It deep cleans fast.
Cleaning toilets is a lousy job, so I invented 2000 Flushes Blue to help you. It's loaded with detergents, cleans and deodorizes automatically. Up to 4 months. Try my 2000 Flushes Blue or green. Cleans your toilet with every flush.
What can you smell with this blindfold on?
Smell anything.
You sure?
I smell nothing. My nose feels stuffy and it's almost like you're working to breathe.
You want fast relief?
The faster, the better.
Try Dristan 12-hour nasal spray. With this blindfold on again, tell me what you smell now.
Orange, yeah. Boy.
Could you smell
Was
it?
that there before?
Did it work fast?
Obviously, it worked very fast. Tristan nasal spray made all the stuffiness go away.
Tristan, the face of relief today.
Do your holiday shopping with the Discover card, and you'll not only give, you'll receive a cashback bonus for every charge. It pays to Discover.
Every time it rains.
The Discover card pays a cashback bonus on every penny you charge.
Pennies from heaven.
It pays to Discover.
It's not even my birthday.
You make every day a party. I love your party frosty. I think your dinosaurs are wild, and I love your teddy bear. You sweet talker, Betty Crocker.
We will control the horizontal. November 30th. The Outer Limits take over TNT with 9 episodes in 9 hours. Nobody plays like TNT.
A leader of the Party of God in Lebanon says the release of the remaining Western hostages no longer depends on what Israel does with its Arab prisoners. Abba Musawi, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, says the 3 remaining Americans are to be freed soon. And Iran said today that the hostage Joseph Sicipio stands a better chance of early release than Terry Anderson or Alan Steen. In fact, says the Iranian news agency, a release could come by the end of next week. Meanwhile, free after more than 6 years of captivity in Lebanon, the former U.S. hostage Thomas Sutherland says he feels like he is, quote, 60 going on 21. Speaking to reporters at a U.S. military hospital in Wiesbaden, Germany, Sutherland described his sufferings at the hands of his kidnappers.
After about, I think, a year and a half, they put us into a pretty bad situation in individual cells, underground, very little light, and I was a bad boy once, and so they gave me a bit of a biffing. And I asked for it, I guess. I disobeyed their rules, and I was very depressed at that point. No light for about 12 days, and they'd come in and bring the food in, you know, and then leave me, no light in the dark, eat in the dark. Try it sometime. It's not much fun.
What was a bit of a biffing?
Belting me on the insoles of my foot until I just couldn't take it any longer, until I started to scream, and they said, quiet, quiet, shut up, and so on. And they screamed as loud as I did to shut up, etc. And then they resorted to the rest of the body, but that was the only time when they really mistreated me, and they prayed ahead of it, so they were already forgiven before they did it, so.
Hospital officials say Sutherland appears to be in overall good health, and he's planning to leave for Iowa tomorrow for the funeral for his father-in-law, who died of cancer on Saturday.
Terry Waite's family says the former hostage will be keeping a relatively low profile. When Waite arrived in England yesterday, it looked like he was taking up where he left off, campaigning for the release of hostages. But today, a family statement said Waite wants to readjust to freedom gradually and plans to avoid the media for the near future. Waite's new reticence leaves unanswered allegations connecting Waite with Oliver North. Some reports have suggested that Waite's past efforts to free hostages were linked to the Iran-Contra scandal. Barry Smith has more on the controversy.
Terry Waite's first full day in freedom found Colonel Oliver North in Kansas City, signing hundreds of copies of his autobiography, selling at £15 a copy. The book mentions Terry Waite just once and in passing. No suggestion that Mr. Waite was, as we now know, an envoy of sorts for the Colonel and the Reagan administration. If Mr. North had his way, it would stay like that. But the stories keep coming. This one in the Washington Post today says that when Terry Waite used to leave for Beirut on his rescue missions, he would give friends Oliver North's number in Washington, in case anything happened to him. So when we sat down with Mr. North in Kansas, we began by looking at how important Mr. Waite was to the Reagan administration's operation to save the Western hostages in Beirut.
How important was Terry Waite to you in terms of contacts and credibility in what you were trying to do?
Well, David, his approach was the only one of all the different
efforts we made to establish contacts with the actual hostage takers. This is the only one that worked. We tried through at least 5 other governments. We tried through various intermediaries in the Middle East, various parties and factions within the Lebanon. And Terry is the only person who was ever able to establish direct contact with the hostage.
He was crucial to what you were doing.
He was, and his effort, I believe, was crucial to the release of 3 Americans.
So how crucial to what you were doing was Terry Waite?
Terry Waite was critically important to establishing that contact with the hostage takers. You have to remember, we learned late in the game that the Iranians did not have total control over the captors.
North then explained for the first time why he'd turned to Terry Waite for help. He needed a direct line to the hostage takers, and Terry Waite provided it. That's why Mr. Waite came to Washington to consult as negotiations proceeded. But here lies the central contradiction. If Terry Waite was so important in North's dealings with Iran, then why didn't he tell Waite of the arms for hostages deal? And the central question, wasn't Terry Waite an agent for the American government?
Terry Waite was not an agent of our government. He wasn't an agent of your government. He was an agent, if of anything, of humanity, of the Anglican Church, and the Roman Catholic Church with whom he was working.
You held a number of meetings with Terry Waite. You provided transport for him, for example. Surely he knew what you were doing.
Well, if Terry Waite knew what I was doing with the Iranians in detail, it wasn't from me.
If he didn't, shouldn't he have known from you? Shouldn't you have told him? Shouldn't you have advised him?
I suppose one of the criticisms is that we didn't bring him into our confidence totally, and that would have made him an agent of our government. And I think that would have increased the risk to him considerably.
But surely what you were doing compromised his position, because there were you out negotiating with the Iranians.
I don't accept that.
And there was him.
David, I don't accept that at all. I tried very hard to keep him apprised of what we knew of the situation in Beirut. Clearly, it wasn't total knowledge.
How could you in all conscience have let Terry Waite go back to Beirut the last time without telling him what you were doing?
You have to remember, I was fired by our government. I was out of touch with him. Remember, I'd been fired. People forget the time sequence and what happened. On the 25th of November, 1986, I was thrown over the side of our government and declared to be a loose cannon.
Final area. Robert Runcie, former Archbishop of Canterbury, has said that Terry Waite was used. Was he?
Well, used. And I'm not certainly going to enter into a debate with the Archbishop of Canterbury. I believe that Terry Waite was one of the bravest, most concerned, most compassionate people that I ever encountered.
Was he used by the administration one way or another?
I don't believe he was used in a sense that was abusive or was contrary to what he wanted to do.
Do you have any pangs of conscience about what happened to Terry Waite?
Of course I do. I wouldn't have prayed for his release for 5 years every single day if I didn't care deeply about him.
As always with this extraordinary character, more questions than answers.
Thanks.
But the implication of what he told us and his book is that if anyone's to blame for Iran-Contra and what happened to Terry Waite, then it's the Reagan administration, not him. Clearly, Mr. North wants the matter to remain closed. So too the Bush administration in Washington, for fear, they say, of jeopardizing the negotiations now underway for the remaining hostages in Beirut. It's an argument Mr. North wants to put to Terry Waite himself next week, when he visits London on the next stage of his book tour.
When World Day continues, Iraq capitulated to Desert Storm troops in February, but Iraq's guns are not silent and shell-shocked refugees are heading for the hills.
AT&T is constantly searching for new ways to help our customers save money on long distance.
We run forecasts, we look at profiles, we do comparisons.
And what we've recently discovered is remarkably simple.
We just got the airline tickets, so...
Those customers who spend over $11 a month on long distance could start saving right away by signing up for the AT&T Reach Out America plan. If you spend over $11 a month, you could save on long distance too. All it takes is one call to 1-800-547-8600.
AT&T, this is Terry. How can I help you?
Hi, Terry. I was wondering if you could help us save some money on our long-distance calls.
This is about people. We have to put ourselves in the customer's place.
Why don't you tell me a little about the way you use long distance?
Well, we make long-distance calls all day long.
You'll learn how you could save 24 hours a day. 25% on calls made after 5 p.m.
Customers say 25% is a pretty good chunk.
And enjoy discounts on daytime calls.
I guess you could say we're pretty good customers.
Who are you talking to?
Terry, would you mind repeating that?
The Reach Out America plan is so easy to use because it helps you save when you call without changing the way
You want to
you
pick
call.
up the phone and be able to call your relatives, your loved ones, and not think how much it's going to cost you.
You can save 24 hours a day. There's a 25% discount in the evenings and a daytime discount as well.
My husband has a sister in Madrid that he calls sometimes.
That's perfect. The plan has a discount on calls all over the world.
What about AT&T calling cards? We each have one.
No problem. The plan lets you save on calls wherever you are.
If you spend over $11 a month on long distance, AT&T can help you save. So call us now at 1-800-547-8600.
Good enough for me.
Thank you for calling AT&T.
Honey, that sounded pretty good. Why don't we sign up?
We just did.
Great. Who do we call?
Call AT&T right now for a special limited time offer from Reach Out America.
Eduard Shevardnadze says it's his duty to return to that post of Soviet foreign minister, this nearly a year after he abruptly resigned, warning of impending dictatorship. Mr. Gorbachev reappointed him to the job on Tuesday. He's replacing Boris Pankin, who's been named ambassador to Britain. President Gorbachev was meeting today with representatives of the so-called G7 nations. The goal is to hammer out the billions of dollars in aid to aid the Soviet switch over to a market economy. The G7 delegation also met with leaders of the various Soviet republics.
The Desert Storm ceasefire did not silence Saddam Hussein's guns. Kurdish leaders say President Hussein is preparing for an all-out war on them. In northern Iraq, Terry Lloyd witnessed one attack.
Thousands of Kurdish families are now fleeing their homes, forced out by Iraqi threats that they will be shot if they do not pack up and go. It's a deliberate policy, say the Kurds, to destroy their homeland now that Saddam Hussein is no longer under the close scrutiny of the Western allies. Innocent families are being driven back into the mountains, and even the Kurdish guerrilla fighters, the Peshmerga, have withdrawn as Iraqi forces mass around key towns and cities. We were with the Peshmerga outside the oil town of Kirkuk when the Iraqis attacked. The guerrillas, armed mainly with rifles, were powerless to respond as the Iraqis fired mortars and machine guns at their positions. We are some miles from Kirkuk, and yet the Iraqi soldiers have already taken over this main road and are now shelling the village of Bina. In other cities still controlled by the Kurds, it's the Iraqi-imposed economic blockade which is strangling these people. Baghdad has cut the fuel pipelines, leaving many queuing for days outside petrol stations which may never be resupplied. For those still able to travel, their routes are littered with memories of earlier conflict, though problems such as this are fresh. The Iraqis have removed a strategic bridge, making this river crossing not only hazardous but slow, as the Peshmerga do their best to operate a primitive ferry service. This, according to Kurdish leaders, is all part of the oppression leading to all-out war.
I'm sure that Iraqi regime is preparing for a new military operation against Kurdish people, and the appointment of Ali Hassan Majid as Minister of Defense, who is well known as a butcher of the Kurdish people, and who is the man who led the campaign of using chemical weapons against Kurdish people and who killed tens of thousands of Kurds. I think this is a new signal that Iraq is preparing for war against Kurdish people. We must expect it.
Families who have already fled their homes have started rebuilding their lives in overcrowded refugee camps in the worst of conditions. They improvise amongst the debris using mud and rock. Most say they have seen nothing of the building materials promised by the United Nations, and so they make do without. Corrugated sheeting to help protect families as part of the UN's winterization program has only just begun trickling across the border, and few Kurds enjoy such relative luxury. Another claim by the UN is that tents are a rare sight in Kurdistan. We saw thousands in makeshift refugee camps where food and water are rare and homeless families are begging for shelter. The few doctors battling to care for these people are being helped by the mild weather. But the snow will fall soon in the mountains, and the death toll will most certainly rise. Deaths from cholera and diarrhea are now mercifully few and far between. The main problem in the refugee camps has been typhoid, but even that can be kept under control. However, in the next few weeks as winter sets in, doctors are worried that chest infections like bronchitis and pneumonia will kill thousands of people, and they are desperately short of antibiotics. Shadow Minister for Overseas Development Aid Anne Clwyd returned to this camp high in the mountains to compare conditions.
I feel enraged, I must say, that 6 months on, the international community has left refugees like this in these conditions when the winter weeks are just a short time away, and they can't exist in the tents that they've got around here in temperatures which drop to minus 15 degrees centigrade.
The Kurds say they have been forgotten. As the sun goes down, they are bracing themselves for a bitter winter and an onslaught from Saddam Hussein's army. Terry Lloyd, ITN, in Iraqi Kurdistan.
If all dogs were just puppies, all we'd make is puppy chow, with more nutrition than most adult dog foods for a healthy start. But dogs are different. That's why we make Puppy Chow, Dog Chow, Fit and Trim, and Purina High Pro. Pet tested, veterinarian recommended.
Hello?
Hello, Jamie. How are you?
How you doing, buddy?
How'd you like the new music?
Great. Really great.
Well, where are the words?
How about checking your fax machine? You're gonna love it. It's a new favorite key.
Hey.
This feeling's just like magic, day by day.
Dex Facsimile, one of a wide range of business communication solutions from Fujitsu, the global computer and communications company.
Presenting a way to make life a lot simpler. The Clapper. Turn on a lamp. Turn on the music. Turn off the TV. Use it anywhere you need a helping hand.
Simple.
Plug it in and insert the plug from just about anything.
Simple. Clap on, clap off, clap on, clap off. The Clapper.
Give it a big hand.
The Clapper is available at Woolworth, Walgreens, Eckerd, and participating True Value. Makes a great gift.
Its mission, the survival of the U.S. government. So secret, few people even know about it. A CNN special assignment examines the doomsday government at 6 and 10 Eastern tonight.
Rescuers are searching through the twisted wreckage of what is being called one of the worst railroad accidents in Mexican history. A runaway freight train jumped the tracks and crossed a highway in the town of Tehuacan, smashing a line of cars yesterday and damaging buildings. Dozens of people were killed. Reports say the brakes failed and the crew abandoned the train. Lord Henry, the Earl of Mount Charles, says he doesn't know if he will rebuild Slane Castle. The 18th century Irish mansion burned yesterday. Lord Henry suffered smoke inhalation after repeatedly rushing into his home to save priceless paintings and antiques. In the 1980s, thousands of people flocked to the castle grounds to hear rock concerts by acts like U2 and Bruce Springsteen.
The nuclear threat may be lifted from Korea. The Associated Press is reporting at least that North Korea has agreed in principle to keep nuclear weapons off that divided peninsula. The agreement came during a visit by the Secretary of State Dick Cheney, or the Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney, and General Colin Powell, who's chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff. North Korea never has admitted it has such weapons or development, but the Associated Press story says it's agreed with South Korea to call for the elimination of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons. And still ahead on World Day, we'll have a look at our top stories, bring you the latest financial news. And a man answered the call when the free world needed his firm resolve. Stay with us for another look at Sir Winston Churchill.
But my cat's healthy. Should I be concerned?
Is a cat's urinary tract health important?
Don't overlook cat's urinary tract health. Introducing new Cat Chow Special Care brand cat food from Purina, specially formulated to help maintain a cat's urinary tract health.
I love my cat, and I give him the best I can.
New Cat Chow Special Care. Special care for your special cat.
Campbell's heard your healthy request.
Low cholesterol.
Less salt.
But lots of taste.
Here's our answer. New Campbell's Healthy Request ready-to-serve soups. All the great taste you want without some things you don't. New Campbell's Healthy Request. And healthy.
pH-balanced Woolite cares for the clothes you care about by protecting them while cleaning them. So keep your favorite clothes looking great. Trust Woolite in the gentle cycle.
World Day continues, followed by Day Watch after this local commercial break. Next on CNN.
Roast turkey, pumpkin pie, and to make the setting complete, the colors of fall in a Thanksgiving centerpiece from the Hy-Vee Floral Department. Our helpful Hy-Vee Teleflor FTD florists use the freshest blooms and the finest silk flowers to create charming arrangements for holidays, weddings, anniversaries, graduations, birthdays, every occasion. For your Thanksgiving table or to say thanks to a friend, make it flowers from the Floral Department at Hy-Vee.
Home Shopping Club, where celebrities feel right at home.
I'm Beverly Sassoon. Enjoy fresh, healthy skin with my Collagen skincare system, only on Home Shopping Club.
I'm Jack LaLanne. Increase your energy and stamina with Fit Over 50, only on Home Shopping Club.
Hi, I'm Brenda Dycraft. Bring out the champion within you with my complete line of fitness products, only on Home Shopping Club.
Home Shopping Club. Great bargains, guaranteed.
This is CNN.
Updating today's top stories, Croatian refugees are pouring out of the city of Vukovar, some seeking shelter in northern Italy. More refugees are being evacuated today from hospitals inside the city. Most of Vukovar's Croatian fighters surrendered on Tuesday after weeks of siege by Yugoslav forces. Thousands of Haitians who want to enter the U.S. are stuck on U.S. Coast Guard ships. A federal judge ruled on Tuesday that the Coast Guard must temporarily stop the forced return of the Haitians. The Haitians have been fleeing their homeland in rickety boats. There are indications that U.S. hostage Joseph Sicipio may be freed soon. Iran's official news agency says there is a strong chance that another Western hostage could be released by the end of next week. The report hinted that Sicipio might be freed before the other remaining U.S. hostages, Terry Anderson and Alan Steen.
And now, World Day, we'll check the financial news. Let's go to Jan Hopkins, who's live at the New York Stock Exchange. Jan?
Thanks, Reed. Stocks are struggling to hold on to an early rally right now on Wall Street. Dow Industrial surged 15 points in the first half hour of trading, but they've since pared those gains. Traders say a continuation of yesterday's late buying binge and some good news on the economy is helping stocks. Also gains in IBM, and it looks like there'll be a strong gain in Merck, that also lifting the market. Right now, the Dow is up 6 3/4 points at 2938.5. Volume is heavy at 47 million shares traded so far. In the broader and secondary markets, all four key indexes are higher. Advancing issues are outpacing declining issues by a 7-5 margin. Market leader IBM is now up 1/4 of a point. It was up more earlier, the IBM trading at 96 3/4. The company is expected to announce a restructuring that includes cutting 20,000 employees next year. That on top of trimming the workforce this year by more than 20,000. Lower interest rates are beginning to help the housing industry. In October, housing starts rose 7.3%. That's the biggest gain in 8 months. Gains were reported in all regions of the country. Housing permits, an indicator of future building plans, also rose, up 5.4%. That's the second straight monthly increase. Bond prices dropped somewhat after the strong housing figures. The Treasury's bellwether 30-year bond down 5/32, and the yield up to 7.93%. The dollar is mixed against most major currencies. Greenback is up 1/3 of a pfennig against the German mark, up 1/2 cent against the British pound. It's down 1/4 of a yen against the Japanese currency. Wall Street's sell-off on Tuesday made for a nervous Wednesday on several international markets. Stocks were sharply lower in Sydney and Hong Kong. But in London, Wall Street's stronger opening has helped boost share prices. Financial Times 100 index up 13 points at 2476. In Tokyo, the Nikkei average closed lower for the 6th straight session. The Nikkei down 127 points to 23,199. That's the latest in business news. Now a final check of the Dow before we go. Dow is up 8 1/4 points. I'm Jan Hopkins, reporting live from the New York Stock Exchange.
You know, it's said that most people walk in the paths beaten by others, but not Sir Winston Churchill. He beat his own path, became one of the most important men of his age. When World Day returns, we'll talk with Churchill's official biographer.
This stock market update is brought to you by Acura Automobiles. Experience precision-crafted performance.
At Acura, we believe that a luxury sedan could appeal to a driver's appreciation of soft leather, fine wood, and beautiful stretches of asphalt. The Acura Legend sedan.
More reliable than most, this umbrella. For it comes from our agents and 35,000 employees dedicated to customer service. Open in case you want insurance and investment expertise the traveler's way. You're better off under the umbrella.
Alaska, if you've got what it takes, you can make it to the top.
Rolling Stone calls Cape Fear poundingly suspenseful. 4 stars from Us Magazine, a great monumental work of terror. From director Martin Scorsese.
Come out, wherever you are.
Cape Fear, rated R, now playing at theaters everywhere.
Television sitcom The Royal Family was struck by tragedy with the loss of its star Red Fox. But actress Della Reese wants to keep the show and her co-star's memory alive. We'll meet her today on Sonia Live, 1 p.m. Eastern, only on CNN.
Hello, I'm Donna Kelly. Coming up on CNN's Day Watch, we'll tell you why many people in the construction industry were busy last month. Also, if you're shopping for a car, our guest has some suggestions for getting a loan. And later, is a woman more likely to be raped because of the clothes she wears? Those stories are coming up on Day Watch. Read.
Well, fate intersects with time, and on occasion, the right person is on hand for that meeting. Winston Churchill was in the right place at the right time as Prime Minister of Great Britain. Subtract Churchill, and the world would be vastly different today. As Nazis goose-stepped their way across Europe and bombs rained on England, Churchill's bulldog determination pulled England through its darkest days. And when the days of blood, sweat, and tears were coming to an end, Churchill helped decide the shape of the post-war world. And even as he prepared to leave the center stage, Churchill foresaw the Cold War and gave a name to the reality that separated former allies.
An iron curtain has descended across the continent.
The Iron Curtain, the Berlin Wall, the Cold War, all no longer exist. But like England, there will always be a Churchill legacy. And that legacy is fully explored in the new big book entitled Churchill, A Life. Its author, Martin Gilbert, the official Churchill biographer, joins us now live on World Day. It is a big book, but it was a large life, was it not?
It was a large life, and curiously, from his very first years, he was somehow alert at the center of events, great fun to be with, great fun to write about, and he somehow had foresight from his teens as to what the world would go through, the turmoils, and his part in it. As a schoolboy, he told his friends, one day London will be threatened, and I will be the one who will be called in to defend it.
He defended it so well, and yet to the American cousins, the mystery has always remained, why was he rejected at the hour of victory?
Well, he always said of himself, I'm half American and wholly British. But his critics said, you're half alien and wholly reprehensible. And I'm afraid he had so many enemies in life. He was an awful politician. He was never able to say what politicians should say. He spoke the truth, and when he gave his warnings, people, in the war they rallied, but in the post-war, when he warned of the dangers ahead, they said, we don't want to know about dangers, and they cast him aside.
You quote him as saying, though, that he sort of forgave them on the very, very teeth of defeat in 45. He said, they have had a very hard time.
Yes, he understood that, and one of the problems was he couldn't persuade the Conservative Party of those days to embark on things like a national health service, which he believed was essential for the people who had had such a hard time in the war. But he bounced back, he brought his party back to power, and then in his second premiership, when many people say he was gaga, finished, he in fact pressed for what we now have, a summit, disarmament, and bringing the Iron Curtain, as it were, to an end.
Well, he attended, with both his ally, Mr. Roosevelt, and then with Mr. Truman, a summit at Yalta and Potsdam. And we generally, I think, agree now that those were mistakes.
Well, there was nothing these great Western leaders could do but go and talk to Stalin. His armies had overwhelmed the Eastern and Central Europe, and they had to, you know, Japan still had to be defeated. His participation was thought vital. But Churchill had no illusions as to what Stalin was doing. And indeed, at Yalta, he fought very hard to try to preserve a democratic Poland. Of course, Stalin simply treated this with contempt. But Churchill never gave up, and one of the things I show in the book was he believed it was not by Western intervention, but by the reviving of the spirit of the people who were captive, that communism would, as he said, suddenly disappear.
Let's get underneath the man and look at his family wife, his wife Clementine, who with him survived to a great age. Was he happy with his progeny?
Well, the wonderful thing about Churchill's family was that they were a family. They always were together, they had great fun, they were rambunctious. The chiefs of staff might come to dinner, but so did his son and 2 or 3 daughters. And on one occasion, they were having such an argument that Churchill said to Randolph, his son, "Stop interrupting me while I'm interrupting." So it was a great rambunctious life. She played an enormous part, Clementine. As I show in the book, whenever she thought he was getting too rough, too extreme, too wild, too inconsiderate, she would sit down and write him a letter explaining exactly what she thought was going wrong, and sent it to him, and he took notice of what she had to say. They agreed never to have breakfast together, but the things a husband and wife would normally argue about at breakfast, to put it down on paper. And she did it, and again she stopped him, if you like, going off the rails.
And late in life, I believe, for her birthday, one of the last ones they were to share together, he wrote her a letter, didn't he?
That's right. I mean, he loved letter writing. When he was a young boy, he was instructing his mother, when he was 8 or 9 years old, as to what she should do on his behalf. He wanted to come up and see Buffalo Bill Cody and his Indians at the Earl's Court. He told his mother to arrange it with the school, and all his life he was a great letter writer. And even when he was old and somehow decrepit, he still was physically able to write these beautiful little notes to his wife. And he said on one occasion, "I'm a paltry scribbler now." But somehow this scribbling was the center of the man. He put everything on paper. Of course, he wrote all his own speeches. He loved the art of writing.
He wrote some letters and exchanges of letters with Mr. Roosevelt that are preserved at Hyde Park, having to do a great deal to do with martinis. How much did Sir Winston drink?
Well, one of his closest friends once said, "Winston has the simplest of tastes. He likes only the best." And he enjoyed life to the full. He loved eating. He would always eat a roast chicken for breakfast. It was not a problem for him to consume it. He loved sports. He loved polo, which he played till he was 52. He loved riding, swimming. And he liked drinking. He liked fine wines and fine brandies and fine champagnes. But curious enough, find him at midnight sitting with his war cabinet at some desperate crisis of the war. His is always the clarity of mind and clarity of vision, which, with or without drink, very few people had.
You would defend the allegation that he spent a great deal of his time and decision-making time in his cups, as it were.
Oh, no, he was very, very rarely inebriated in any serious way. Very, very rarely. He drank whiskey with so much water that if I offered it to you as a whiskey and water, you'd say, "Where's the whiskey?"
Right. At one time, during the height of the war, you have him looking, I believe, at the bombing of Berlin, or maybe Dresden it is, and having some second thoughts, saying, quote, "Are we beasts? Are we taking this too far?" Did he have that element of mercy in him?
Yes, you know, again, it's perhaps the theme of my book, that from his first experiences of war as a young man, he understood that the actual war was horrendous. He wrote to his wife in a very moving letter. He said, "Much as war fascinates and excites my mind by its tremendous situations, I realize more each year what vile and utter folly and barbarism it all is." And so he had this feeling. He understood war. And his was always, contrary to the myth, the voice of restraint and caution and not wanting to send men in World War I. you know, to the attrition in the trenches, and in World War II, always looking for devices, how to save lives.
Was he satisfied, you think, with his life as it ended? He saw the world on an uncertain note, but he seemed rather to go quietly into that dark.
He had two great failures in his mind. One was that he had failed to persuade the government before World War I to embark upon a naval disarmament with Germany, which would prevent the clash which took place in 1914. And the other failure, which he felt to his last day, was he failed to persuade the British government in 1938 to say to Hitler, if you cross a foreign frontier, the world will be up in arms against you. He blamed himself, although he spoke so powerfully in those days, he blamed himself for failing to prevent World War II, and he called it the unnecessary war when Roosevelt said, what should we call it? It didn't have to take place. But his satisfaction was that after he left office, his dream that the world leaders would meet, that the Russian leaders and the Western leaders would meet, that dream came to pass. You had the first summit, which Eden started, and he would have been very satisfied with what our leaders are doing today across the no longer existing Iron Curtain.
So much history and so little time and such a man. Our thanks to historian Martin Gilbert, the author of Churchill, The Life. World Day will continue.
We exercise, we eat right, we even quit smoking. So, hopefully we're gonna live longer, maybe a lot longer. Then one day it hit us. Have we saved enough to live to be 80 or 90 or maybe even 100 years old?
Ricola, the all-natural herb cough drop imported from Switzerland. Ricola has been soothing throats and relieving coughs naturally for over 60 years.
Generations. To be part of one is much more than the simple matter of your birthday. It's to be part of an era. It's to have fallen in love to a rock band and not a big band, or to have played ball with an aluminum bat instead of a wooden one. It's to have done things as no other generation would. And yet it's also to share one idea with all of them. For every generation, there's a gap.
Campbell's heard your healthy request.
Low cholesterol.
Less salt.
But lots of taste.
Here's our answer. New Campbell's Healthy Request ready-to-serve soups. All the great taste you want without some things you don't. New Campbell's Healthy Request. And healthy.
Tonight, will Magic Johnson's tragedy save other professional athletes from the perils of promiscuity? Tonight, Larry King Live, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Time now for the World Day Weather Tour. Here's Valerie Voss.
And we start out over the South American continent with 1200 Greenwich Mean Time conditions and a pretty typical picture. A few rain showers up along the Venezuela coast, showers and thunder showers from Amazonas, Brazil to Minas Gerais, and some occasional light rain across southern Chile and Argentina with a frontal system in the region. A little fog also right along the Andes. We move then to the Pacific region. Some snow showers still falling eastern Mongolia with a developing frontal system, keeping an eye on that for you. A few snow showers also in the higher elevations across northern Japan. Some snow showers also the Amur Valley across the northeast sections of Asia. A few scattered showers and thunder showers in tropical regions across some sections of Australia, and a frontal system around New Zealand producing some windy conditions, the Cook Straits. Tia still moving rather erratically. It did bring some pretty serious weather to the eastern Solomon Islands, but also we are expecting now to see that dissipate with time. Our conditions, of course, are as of 12 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time, at least our frontal positions are. Take a look now at the African continent. Showers and thunder showers once again in tropical regions. A frontal system pushing down into northwestern Africa with a few rain showers associated with that. The remnants of a tropical cyclone can be seen in the Arabian Sea. That is the cyclone that moved across India a while back. A frontal system also across South Africa. Conditions 12 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time, and on the European
conditions map, you can see a frontal system across Italy, stretching down through the Mediterranean, bringing colder air in behind it. It has produced some heavy rains and continues to do so around Austria into Yugoslavia and Italy. Some flooding has been reported in Venice. Also some flooding last night at Lille, France, associated with about an inch of rain that fell in the area. Some snow showers northern Norway, also northwestern sections of Russia. Conditions, 1200 Greenwich Mean Time, in Belgrade 14, which is 58 on the Fahrenheit scale. Those are conditions for today. Our forecasts are for tomorrow. That's Thursday for some specific European cities. Have a good day, whatever your weather, wherever you are. World Day continues now with Reed Collins.
And we're going to continue to find out what they're doing playing tennis in New York this time of year, and Tom Steiner has all the sports.
Thanks, Reed. Gabriela Sabatini came to New York this week, not sure how her injured back would hold up. The last thing she wanted was to be stretched to the limit in her first-round match, but Katerina Maleeva nearly succeeded in doing that before the third-seeded Sabatini caught fire in the second-set tiebreak. The women's season-ending event being staged at Madison Square Garden in New York. The baseline barrage by the two before Gabby would force the action. Gabriela in the far court. The slicing backhand comes up to the net and then puts it away. 6-2 Sabatini wins the first set. And they go to the second in a tiebreak. Maleeva had a 4-1 lead in the tiebreak, but Gabby won the final 5 with shots like this. Boom. And then match point coming up. Maleeva would send the forehand a little bit wide, and there's your straight set victory for the third-seeded Sabatini, 6-2, 7-6. Arantxa Sanchez Vicario joined Sabatini in the second round with an impressive outing against Zina Garrison. This is the best point of the match, with Garrison in the near court. After splitting the first 2 sets, Sanchez Vicario caught fire. She got in the groove, was unstoppable in the decisive third with great shots, and looked like John McEnroe there as Zina took her frustrations out on her equipment. 4-6, 6-1, 6-love. Number 7, Mary Jo Fernandez was also successful in her opening round match, although she did get an assist from Helena Sukova, who hobbled off the court in the third set with a pulled hamstring. Now let's spend a moment reviewing some of the numbers on a scoreboard roll. Popular Londoner heavyweight Frank Bruno returns to the ring tonight for the first time since Mike Tyson stopped him for the world title nearly 3 years ago. Bruno tipped the scales at 228 pounds for his bout against part-timer John Emmen of the Netherlands. That means Bruno outweighs his veteran opponent by nearly 18 pounds. Bruno trained in Las Vegas for nearly 2 months, says he feels pretty good and is not experiencing any pre-fight jitters. The fight will take place in London. Well, last month we saw the Atlanta Braves honored with a lavish ticker tape parade, and they didn't even win the World Series. Joyous rugby fans in Sydney, Australia today flocked to the streets to greet the World Cup championship team. A reported 100,000 people crowded into the downtown area to take part in the festivities, which included the presentation of symbolic keys to the city to some of the members of that national team. And lastly, sprinters Carl Lewis of the United States and Germany's Katrin Krabbe were named International Athletes of the Year by a worldwide voting panel. And that is your World Day Sports. Back with another update after the top of the hour. World Day continues in a moment.
Imagine being born with the ability to meet any challenge expertly. That's the wonder of the Maxim XI from Minolta. With the experience of professionals programmed right in, it responds to any change of speed, or light, or distance automatically. For ultimate performance, the multi-talented Maxim XI, born experienced, only from the mind of Minolta.
Old MacDonald had a mule, he lived in Ohio, and on his mule he hauled supplies to where he had to go. Well, he hauled things here and he hauled things there, here he hauled, there he hauled, everywhere.
hard-working Mule 500 from Kawasaki. Carries everything but a big price tag. Affordably priced at $39.99.
Old MacDonald had a mule, and boy did that thing go.
You know your love keeps lifting me, keeps on lifting me higher and higher. I said your love keeps lifting me, keeps on lifting me higher and higher.
GE Spacemaker products, a higher level of entertainment for your kitchen.
It feels as refreshing as it looks. The new shower massage from Teledyne Waterpik.
November Superbuy is the GE Miser Value Pack with 4 55, 70, or 95-watt energy-saving Miser bulbs, plus a 3-way bulb. Now just $277 at Century Hardware.
People in a remote Siberian village report a sighting of something you don't see every day. Descriptions say it is a giant green snake with the head of a sheep swimming in their lake. The Soviet news agency TASS quotes villagers who say the monster is as big around as a large tree trunk. There is no word on whether a little vodka was slipped into the town's water supply.
On a serious note, in Europe today, a wave of violence is reflective of scenes of a painful past. Nazi slogans now are the hallmark of several disenchanted people who see those of a different race as the enemy. Tomorrow on World Day, we'll have a look at what is behind Europe's neo-Nazi movement. Join us tomorrow for World Day. I'm Reed Collins in Washington.
And I'm Bobby Batista at CNN Center in Atlanta. Here's Donna Kelly with what's coming up on Day Watch.
Thank you, Bobby. The world is keeping an eye on Wall Street. We'll have a live report from the stock market. And later, wheeling and dealing. If you're in the market for a car, our guest could help steer you toward a loan. And we'll have some timely tips. And later, a dramatic look at some desperate calls for help as a killer stalks a post office. All that and more is just ahead on Day Watch.
Coming up, Day Watch, followed by Cryer and Company, after a word from your local cable system here on CNN.